what's happening, everybody? Coach Joe here from Varsity House Gym. I'm here with my business partner, Dan Goodman.
What's going on, everybody?
And, we are at the amazing Elite FTS headquarters here, and we're going to talk a little bit about band training. You know, since 2006, when we started the gym, we've had Elite FTS bands in the gym, and we have used them for literally thousands of different applications with thousands of athletes and individuals from all over, America, from every sport and every ability. So bands give you a great opportunity to improve a couple aspects of your physical training. One, they're super low impact, so great for warming up, great for tendon work and like strengthening and doing lots of high rep work to kind of warm up the body and so forth. Two, they're easy to use and easy to apply anywhere. So, you could always have a set of bands in your gym bag or with you, whether you're an athlete or an individual looking for training. You can bring these with you to your gym. We bring them a lot when we travel and we go on vacation.
Any home gym,
hotel gym. You can add a great dynamic to it. And then lastly, for assisted work, and this might be a little bit more advanced for some people, but we're going to show you some partner variations that we do with the bands, but assisted work on bench, squats, even some accessory work, like we'll show you a variation of a Nordic glute ham today, where you could use the bands, and the bands can act like your de facto spotter sometimes. We were just doing a great hack squat variation here with the hack squat machine, using the bands attached to the top. And that way at the bottom of the movement, when you're in your, kind of weakest point at the most, let's call it disadvantageous angle, you could have the bands pull a little bit of resistance off of that and make it a little bit more comfortable, especially, for myself, an aging athlete, right, really concerned about joint health and so forth. But that should be your concern, whether or not you're a young kid all the way up. Bands are a great way to add a new dynamic to your training. We use them every single day, warm-ups, accessory work, finishers, things like that. And they've been a staple in our training literally for nearly 20 years.
Absolutely. I mean, we got kids using bands my son's 5 years old. He'd use a band. We have 75-year-old clients. We've been using bands, as Joe said, in the warm-up as part of the training and the accessory work since 2006. And when we started using bands in 2006, it was pretty rare to see them in gyms. And now, if you walk into a gym, you want to make sure that people are doing training the right way. You better look to make sure that they got some great bands, some high quality bands in that gym.
Yeah, and on that note too, speaking about the quality, obviously I've bought a lot of bands from Elite FTS and almost exclusively from them, but a few times, for whatever reason, right, got lazy, maybe found a sale on cheap bands on Amazon, and I will say don't do that. There is a big difference, and they fall apart really quickly, and we've had some ruptures in the gym. So you definitely want to make sure that you're buying from a reputable source that's checked the quality of the bands, that's really sourced to a high quality manufacturer, and Elite definitely does that. So if you're going to start using these, obviously you want to be safe and you want to use good quality equipment. All right, everyone, so we're just going to show you a couple exercises that we like to do as part of the warm-up with the band. So the first exercise Dan's going to do is just going to be a standard band pull apart, and this is one of our favorite shoulder warm-ups, and I think, like, for our adult community and our athletes, especially our throwing athletes, that this should be one of the things that you focus on a ton and do these pretty much every day. If you come into Varsity House, you're going to see all of our athletes and adults doing band pull aparts. You can do them overhand, you can do them underhand.
Okay, you get me to breathe heavy
right, on the mic. That's it. If you get Dan huffing and puffing a little bit, we do an overhead variation. We do an offset variation, which is kind of like an angle. And again, for throwing athletes, overhead athletes, whether you're a volleyball player, tennis athlete, or a pitcher, thrower in baseball, softball, these are great ways to warm up the shoulder blades, scapular complex, and reduce the chance of injury. So that's one of our favorite warm-ups. The next exercise Dan's going to do is called a shoulder dislocate. This exercise, I see that it can be done inappropriate or incorrectly. So the best way to do this is to get a nice wide grip on the bands, and this is going to really depend on your flexibility. The less flexible you are, the wider you want to go on the hand grip, okay? And that's going to help you circle around. So Dan's going to make a big circle, kind of push that band out and away from himself, come all the way around the back, up and around, right? Squeezing his shoulder blades in the back, trying to keep a nice posture, head straight, back straight, head up, right? And we usually do somewhere in the range of 5 to 15 reps, depending on the athlete, how well trained they are, and what their flexibility looks like. Now, what you don't want is to have a lot of crunching and popping going around. So that usually means that you're trying to grab. If you grab too close, It's super hard to get your hands back, so you get that nice wide grip, and you could open it up a little bit more and come all the way around. And that's a great shoulder pec opener, okay?
I see a lot of people doing these with a broomstick or a dowel. The band just gives you a little bit more give in those sticking points.
Yeah.
We always prefer using a band for shoulder openers and dislocates.
Great, okay, our next exercise Dan's gonna do, I mean, you might wanna use the larger band here. This is one of our favorite posterior chain warm-ups, and we'll do this pretty much for every lower body speed session and training session. And it's just a banded good morning. So he's gonna step inside the band, make a little triangle.
So step in, keep the tension on the band.
Band goes around the neck, right? And then it's just a standard good morning. Posterior chain, squeeze the glutes, push those hips way back. All right, and remember, you're not technically doing this as a strength exercise in the warm-up. So what I'm really focused on here is really pushing my hips back, getting those hamstrings nice and stretched and warmed up, right? Getting them into stretch positions, because generally what's gonna happen after this is we're gonna go out and do some running or skipping and moving. So we wanna make sure that we warm up those hamstrings real good. All right, so, you know, somewhere in the range, again, usually keeping in that 10 to 20 rep range, depending on the athlete, their trainability, their age, right? Little kids, we might do less. Older kids, you know, older athletes or professional athletes that need a lot more warming up to grease up those joints a little bit better, we might do more reps, all right? Next exercise, just gonna be a speed squat, okay? So he's just gonna grab hold of that, and we're kind of gotta just rep him out. He's gonna up and down, all right? Nice and simple, just a little bit, all right? You get a little bit of resistance. The bands are gonna kind of almost like pull you down. You get a little over speed work with that going down. Right, you could take this as fast or as far as you want, and as you do your sets, each set could get a little bit more intense as you go, and you can build up the speed and power on those. We like those a ton. Okay. Yeah, you can get out of there.
Sweating now.
Are you a gym owner struggling to build a staff that sells, leads, and sticks around? Then you can't miss this. September 18th and 19th, my friends at the Varsity House are hosting the Business of Strength retreat at the beautiful Canopy Hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona. The theme this year is Interns to All-Stars, your complete employee development playbook designed for gym owners. You will get the same systems used at Varsity House to turn brand new interns into six-figure coaches, managers, and even partners. A 10-week intern training program, team alignment and cultural leadership strategies, sales systems that make every coach a closer, a plan to retain and reward your best people for the long haul, their proprietary on-the-job training program, workshops with other world-class gym owners, and a chance to win a $5,000 private consulting package. Plus, you'll hear from elite speakers like Mark Innes, Joe Riggio, Dan Goodman, Devin Gage, and a stacked panel of top gym owners doing this at scale. And they will also have a rooftop cocktail party, which will take an already great networking experience and make it even better. They only have 50 seats available. Visit bosretreat.com to register now. Use the code ELITE250 to save $250 as a VIP listener to the Table Talk podcast.
So you saw some of the warm-up drills that we use to warm up with the bands. Now we're gonna go into a little bit of plyometrics, and, you know, as a general progression, we'll go from our dynamic warm-up and movement prep to some type of rhythm plyo work, kind of get a little pop going, get that central nervous system going. So the first exercise we're gonna do here is just some resisted pogos. All right, these are super simple. You can put it around your waist. I'm just using the band as a different variation to get something dynamic. I know we're always looking for fun, challenging ways to challenge our athletes and individuals. So again, everybody's done pogo hops. So here we're doing our normal pogos, but I'm getting a little bit of resistance, and we could move, you know, quick, right? You could do your hip work here, okay? You could skip. All right, and that little bit of extra band resistance, I feel it, right? Just adding that tiny bit of resistance with Dan behind me is adding a lot of pull, right? It's getting me into a good athletic lean. I could feel my anterior chain engaging from the resistance, and it's just another variation. So again, another tool to add to your tool belt in your warm-up drills.
If you don't have a partner, you can obviously use a rack or a bench, just an inanimate object, and you're good to go.
That's it. All right, so the next exercise we're gonna do is a lateral bounder. This is a great one. We do this a ton. You could do, there's two, you wanna just hold that a tiny bit lower, Dan. And then there's two variations that we're gonna do here. One a bounder and one like a crossover, okay? So the bounder, most people have done, that's where you're just gonna jump out. I'm gonna come back. Now obviously the leg that's returning is getting a lot more of that overspeed. So talk about force absorption, right? Impact absorption, and being able to slow down your mass against the force of gravity, right? Against movement and momentum is sports, right? Sports is all about acceleration and deceleration. So this is a great drill of teaching athletes how to power out of a movement and decelerate and stop the body, power, decelerate, power, decelerate. You can do this same thing, same drill with athletes doing crossover steps and so forth, okay? So there's 100 different variations. First step, if you're training track athletes, first step, sprint starts, right? Resisted starts. There's a tremendous amount of application here.
Let's see a broad jump, coach.
Oh, I'm gonna get him here. Let me show you my lack of athleticism, okay? So one of our favorite exercises though is a resistant broad jump. And I think that the broad jump is a perfect exercise for teaching explosive triple extension in athletes without the barbell, right? So, there's a lot of great Olympic weight coaches out there, but also there's a lot of people who maybe haven't had the experience when it comes to Olympic weightlifting and getting that triple extension that Olympic weightlifting is kind of known for. The broad jump does that with way lower impact, way less training skill and ability, and you could do this in masses. So if you have groups of kids, you're doing, speed and performance training with athletes, and you got 10 kids training, you got 5 kids on the band, 1 kid's holding their partner up, 1 kid's holding the band. They do a series of jumps, the next kid goes. So it's a great way when you're doing group training, especially in masses, or you're on the field doing your summer workouts as high school or college football coaches. So broad jump, super simple, right? Get that nice high position, load up. Big thing I see with the broad jump is when I load up, I want to get that forward lean, and then I'm going to drive out, and that's where I'm going to get my triple extension, okay? And that's where the band resistance is really going to help a little bit. So I'm going to load up, power, extend, load up, kind of sit back nice and smooth, stick the landing as best as possible, load up, fire, stick the landing. All right, again, teaching kids explosive triple extension, force absorption, impact, right? Resistance and resiliency in all sports. I mean, that's one of the key fundamentals to not getting injured is impact resistance. So great exercises. It's pretty good. After you go through your dynamic warm up and movement prep, we get into some rhythm and plyo work, right? To activate the nervous system. And I'm going to show you a couple accessory strength exercises that we love using the bands for. So one of them is just a band resistant Bulgarian split squat, right? Or a, rear leg elevated split squat. And I'm just gonna put the front leg out, get my position, right? Check my position here. Put the band around my neck, back foot's up on the bench, right? So I'm in the same position. There's no real difference here, but the band's giving me that nice little bit of resistance. And what the band does differently than like static weight with the dumbbells is that it's actively pulling me down. So again, for athletes, if I'm looking for speed, force absorption, power, okay, and explosiveness is key. Teaching athletes slow grinding movements is part of building strength, but at some point you have to translate that strength and that slow grind into speed and power. And this is a great transition piece using the band, going from maybe a several weeks of training with weighted Bulgarians to a phase where you're now going to bands and looking for more pop and explosiveness. Next strength exercise is a great accessory. This is one of the key fundamental exercises to sports performance, back health, lower back health, and posterior chain. That's a Nordic glute ham. So this is a great setup. Again, when you're thinking about like training at Varsity House, we do a lot of group training, like young kids all the way up through college and pros. And we might be training in groups of 10, 15, 20 kids. So this is a really efficient way to move kids through one of the best exercises for your posterior chain, a Nordic glute ham. So just to talk you through this, right, we're gonna sling the band around one shoulder like this, right, so I can still use my hands. And then Dan's gonna put that band around his shoulder, basically in the same way, so he's holding it. Sometimes I'll put it like right around my neck if it's a smaller kid with a smaller band, but obviously I'm a little larger, we got a big band here. Maybe not the best pulling on your neck. Dan's gonna butt his thighs right up against my feet. My toes are bent, right, forward. And he's gonna put a bunch of his weight down on my heels to keep my feet planted on the ground. And then the band's gonna give me a little pop, because a lot of people don't have the strength to do a full Nordic glute ham and pull themselves up and down. In fact, very, very, very few people have the intrinsic strength to just do those on their own. So what the band's gonna do is gonna help give me, right, a little bit of power. I'm gonna come down, I'm squeeze, 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 get to the ground, kind of lower with control, and then pull, 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 pull. And what this does is it allows me to titrate the amount of resistance that I'm putting on my hamstrings by using my hands and the band resistance. Now, I'm decent at doing these, right? But I'm still heavy. So I'm feeling a lot of stretch and pull coming down there. I'm doing a lot of muscle work. If you're really struggling, you could just put another band on or use one of the heavier versions of the bands. So really, whether you're a little kid or you're a really big athlete, or Dan's a little bit larger than myself, right? He's a little heavier. So you could just use a larger band. So I'll do another couple reps, right? Come down, squeeze. I'm pulling my hamstrings to my glutes. Pull those heels to my glutes. Down, resist, resist, resist. I could use my hands a little bit, give myself a little bit of pop, and then pull. Right, so that way, in terms of the strength curve, I'm trying to resist as much as I can until I feel like I almost can't. The band's gonna take over. I can kind of absorb into the ground nice and smooth, use my hands a little bit, and then give myself a little bit of pop, and then take over with those hamstrings again as soon as I get into a better leverage position, right? One of the absolute best exercises that you could do for your posterior chain. Again, I'm gonna show you another great accessory exercise for the hamstrings. This is really great for pre-sprinting and sprinting athletes, which is pretty much all athletes, right? Any power sport athlete or track athlete. These are great for working the high hamstring, really where the glute and the hamstring kind of intersect, and which is often the area that's usually strained or pulled in track athletes and or field sport athletes. So this is called a hamstring flutter. So you're just gonna, in this case, obviously I'm a little bigger and heavier. I'm a little over 230 pounds. So depending on the size of your athlete or how big you are, you could, again, change the resistance by either adding or deleting bands. But in this case, you're gonna get the heels, right? Up over the bands, right on where the Achilles are. I'm gonna get my arms out to the side. I'm gonna get those glutes up nice and high. And then from that point, imagine you're just walking. You could start literally with a hamstring walk. And then as you get better, right? You kind of punch them out nice and quick. So you could start with your athletes by just doing single leg pickups, right? We'll call these stick leg walks, and then straight to a flutter exercise for a little bit more power and pop. This is very challenging. This is definitely a little bit more of an advanced variation. Here's another great power speed, track specific, field sports specific exercise. We call this a high knee stomp. I'm gonna get into a good position and get that knee up nice and high. And all I'm doing is pushing down and drive up, down, drive, down, drive, right? And you're gonna feel this a lot in the glute and hamstring. And again, as you get better, as another warm up, right? I'm engaging my core, I'm powering through. It's teaching me a stable position, okay? Working the head. It's almost like doing a over speed step up. So another great exercise for field sport and track athletes. Jumping ability, force absorption, one of the key fundamentals to all sports performance. All right, here we have a set of the Triphasic bars hooked up here to a rack with a set of bands. If you don't have a set of the Triphasic bars, it doesn't matter. You could just hook them to the top of a general rack or to a ceiling or to a bandit situation, right? Where you have like rings, we've hooked them up to rings and so forth. So again, here I'm just loading and I'm gonna use the bands as a way to get me a little higher and then absorb. So I'm gonna load up, right? And again, I'm getting a lot more power and explosiveness out of it by using the bands as a springboard, as almost like a slingshot, and then teaching me to absorb. So I'll show you one more time. I come down, load fast, right? Load hard, up, come down, load up, power, right? This is creating a little bit of a kind of overspeed process, really forcing the body into an explosive movement, right? And then absorbing that impact. Another great exercise for your athletes.
Dave Tate here from Elite FTS to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu.